learning. Just give it a minute or two and we've still got people joining the session. My name is Lyndall Manson and I'm the Director of Governance, Policy and Projects at TAFE Directors Australia, and I'm really pleased to be able to welcome you all here today. Before I begin, I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands upon which we meet right across Australia. So today I'm coming to you from Naarm, which is Melbourne, on the lands of the Wurundjeri people, and I pay my respects to their elders, past and present, and I extend that respect to any First Nations peoples that are with us here today. So if you would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands upon which you're currently on, please feel free to do so in the chat. So for today's TAFE Talk session, we are joined by TAFE Queensland, TAFE New South Wales and D2L for a discussion on immersive technologies, including how augmented reality and virtual reality can improve learner outcomes, particularly in high risk and high cost training scenarios. So this collaboration between TAFE Queensland and TAFE New South Wales on immersive technologies has grown out of the TAFE Immersive Learning Network. This national network allows TDA members to share knowledge and experience on using AR and VR to enhance their educational delivery. So from TAFE Queensland, I would like to introduce Lee Webster, who is the Director of Learning Technology, Innovation and Services. Welcome, Lee. I'd also like to introduce John O'Brien, who is the Innovation Team Manager in Learning Technology Services for TAFE New South Wales. Welcome, John. And we are also joined by Tony Maguire, who is the Regional Director for Australia and New Zealand at D2L. So thank you for joining us today, Tony. I'd actually just like to take a quick minute to acknowledge the support of D2L, which is a valued TDA corporate affiliate, because it's really thanks to D2L that we're able to run these TAFE Talk sessions free of charge for our members. So a really big thank you to D2L and to Tony Maguire for joining us in the discussion today. So in terms of the format for today, we will start with a joint presentation by Lee and John, and then Tony will conclude with some reflections. And after that, we'll open up the floor for a Q&A session at the end. So if you have any questions for our speakers, we would appreciate it if you could type them into the Q&A box rather than the chat so that we can keep track of them. And just so that you are aware, today's session is being recorded and both the recording and the slides used today will be made available on the TDA website and to anyone who registered for the TAFE Talk session today. Please also note that closed captioning is available for this event. So without further ado, I would now like to hand over to John O'Brien to kick off today's presentation. Over to you, John.
Thanks, Lyndall. Just quickly share my screen. Okay. Thanks, everyone. So as Lyndall said, from TAFE New South Wales, I sit in our Learning Technology Services team in the Innovation Team or Innovation Lab, as we're often known. We develop a lot of the immersive learning content for TAFE New South Wales. So we build a lot of AR and VR applications. To start things off, Lee and I thought it'd probably be a good place to get everyone on the same page regarding a few definitions, because if you simply Google it, you'll find that there is a lot of definitions for immersive technology. When we're talking about this throughout the presentation, we'll refer to things like augmented reality, virtual reality, and we may even touch a little bit on mixed reality. So augmented reality, just think of this as basically an overlay on your world. So the most common form that most people would have seen is through a mobile phone, using a smartphone to overlay additional information on your world. The more advanced option is through a headset like a HoloLens or something like that, which again, you can still see your world, but you then have more information placed over the top. Then we have VR or virtual reality. This is a fully immersive experience. So you're completely closed off to your surroundings, but that adds another layer of immersion to your content. It's very useful in a training scenario because the memory retention is essentially one-to-one with doing it for real in the real world. And then we have mixed reality, and this is where things get a little bit fuzzy. So mixed reality has a lot of different definitions, but essentially it's kind of a cross between the two. So the recently released Apple Vision Pro or Quest Pro, there's also a HTC headset in the same category. These tend to offer both a VR and an AR kind of mode, or a VR pass-through mode. So you're able to still see the real world and overlay information on top of those, but you also have a bit more immersion than say a smartphone or some of the earlier headsets like the HoloLens. There is another definition you'll probably come across as well, which is XR. It's less a definition and more of an umbrella term. So a lot of people will use XR or extended reality to describe the whole of this sort of immersive ecosystem across all three of these areas. We have a little poll to start with. If we can get you guys to interact with it, it will really help us out to understand where everyone stands. So what we're really looking for here is just trying to understand what kind of background and information you've had in the past, what kind of exposure you've had to VR and AR, and whether you plan to use it at all.
John, we have a lot of responses coming in. I'll just leave it for a little bit longer.
Yeah, I can't see those on my end, so I might need to get you to share them, even if you wanted to pop a screenshot in the chat, maybe.
Okay, I'll see what I can do. All right, I'm going to end the poll now then.
Oh, there we go. Never mind. The results came through after the fact. I thought I might be able to see them live. Okay, so this is awesome. Looks like you've all had a lot to do with, but we've also got some don't knows at the bottom there as well. So we'll keep things at a relatively high level. Apologies for anyone who gets sort of is a bit deeper into it and understands things, but we'll try and keep things relatively high level so that we can take care of those people who have not had as much exposure. But lots of good use there, which is really cool. Good to see. So in TAFE New South Wales, we've developed quite a few virtual reality experiences. The 5 I've got on the screen here were actually developed as part of a immersive learning grant we received from Meta, formerly known as Facebook, the company Meta. We developed an app for plumbing safety, childcare safety, explosive power tools, PPE, and animal anatomy. These apps are actually all publicly available, so anyone can actually go and access them. If you just search for these apps directly in the Meta Quest store, you'll be able to find them. They are App Lab apps though, so they're a little trickier to find. You kind of have to scroll to the bottom and open up a second section to get past all the entertainment apps. These are currently out there and available to anyone of them who wants to test them out. We are currently not using a huge number of these in our curriculum, but I know TAFE Queensland has started to explore the use of some of them in their space, and we're just starting to work with our carpentry sections at the moment to try and see if we can use the explosive power tool safety in that section. Most of these are a good example of what we tend to think of as being a great use of VR as well, in the sense that they're mostly categories of it where something is either dangerous or difficult to achieve in real life. So particularly explosive power tools and plumbing safety give us the opportunity to show consequences of the actions of users, in the sense that in plumbing safety, it's all about electrical safety in the context of plumbing. And if you make a mistake, you will actually electrocute yourself in the app and have to start again. So it gives us that opportunity to really push the boundaries of people's understanding of safety. And another one of the apps is Explosive Power Tools, as I mentioned. So we've got a little bit of a trailer here I'll play, but this is basically a guided step-by-step instructional piece on how to properly use an EPT. For those who don't know, an EPT is actually it's essentially a nail gun where the charge is, nail is fired using an explosive charge, like a gunpowder charge. So naturally in Australia, that means these are basically treated like a firearm. So they have a lot of regulation and they're very, very heavily regulated for safety. So the processes and requirements to using them are quite complex to learn. So this is a great tool for students to be able to go through and practice, and then also take an internal assessment inside VR as well to understand what they have learnt and what they're missing. So as you can see, we obviously can take you through quite a complex step-by-step process. And as mentioned, we can then take the students through and actually get them to repeat that without any guidance. So they can get that opportunity to learn and then also assess what they've learned as well. I have another demo here as well. This is a really simple example, just a sort of 2-minute quiz that if you scan this QR code, it'll actually bring up for you in AR, just to show everyone what we're talking about when we talk about mobile AR. It's a very, very simple, easy example of what we can do. So anyone who wants to, please feel free to grab your phones and scan that QR code. Once you've scanned that QR code and downloaded, it'll download the experience in your browser, and you can access that there. You'll have to give it access to your camera in order to be able to scan, obviously. And then this QR code actually also acts as what's called a tracking image. So basically the image will stick to that on your screen and you'll see a plumbing cavity in a wall with some pipes and things. So now I'll give you guys all a minute to have a little look at that. And then I will actually pull up my camera as well and show you what it looks like from the user's perspective. So excuse my messy desk. Oh, sorry, I can't actually get that screen to move. I may just have to exit. So I just need to exit presentation mode so that I can get the two next to each other. Oh, sorry, this is stuck underneath my window. Apologies for the hassle. Nothing ever goes right when you try and do a live demo. See if I can get this to work. Okay, so we just scan that QR code, press on the link there. As I said, you need to grant access to the camera so that we can then view the tracking image. I'll just pull that to one side. So now I can use that tracking image and it will load
the icon that matches the
this little quiz. So for you, it'll probably be a little bit bigger if you've got the QR code larger. And then in here, we can see inside the wall, I can get in and move all the way around it. And then I can identify the objects.
At the bottom of screen.
If I click the little hint up here as well, it'll actually show me what those pipes are. So I should be able to tell that the gas pipe is the yellow one. and then the water pipe, and then the little electrical wire hiding in the back there. So as mentioned, that was just a very simple little example of what we can do with AR. I'm sure you can imagine we can create much more complex interactions, but being able to do a quiz or something like that directly in that AR experience just gives us a slightly more interactive way of being able to do things than just a static web page. One of the other tools we also work with as well is in the immersive space is actually building out 3D tools that live directly in a browser. So this is a anatomy tool that we built based on some of the assets we used in our animal anatomy VR project. We basically then were able to reuse those assets in a 3D experience in browser, which basically is just a little 3D experience where we can actually go and explore animal anatomy directly in a web browser. And you can click through the different layers of the anatomy of the animal and explore that different content. Switch between male or female, which obviously is interesting when we get down to the urogenital, and we can actually go through the different sections of it. So, just one of the examples of the ways that we tend to try and reuse a lot of our content across multiple platforms. Just really gives us a lot more bang for our buck when it comes to the development time on a lot of these experiences. I can jump back to PowerPoint, and I think I'm ready to hand over to Lee.
Yeah, thanks, John. So I think we do have another poll for you. So Linda, if we could launch that one now. Great, thanks. If you can see the results coming in, Linda.
They came through for me, Lee, when it was when it was closed out last time.
Yes, we're getting good results.
Excellent.
I'll give it maybe 10 more seconds.
Okay.
Okay, closing the poll.
Right.
And hopefully you should be able to see the results.
Oh, right. So our highest are the expected cost of deployment and technical deployment issues. And that's looking like we don't have a high number of results in the no challenges. So that certainly rings very familiar to what we've experienced at TAFE Queensland as we have been rolling out our immersive technology strategy. I might just share my screen now. So are you seeing that?
Not yet, Lee.
Okay, sorry, there we go. That might be better.
Yes.
Okay, excellent. And I will just bear with me while I just stop sharing for a moment. Sorry, just got to find. Okay. Don't know what's happening here. I'm very sorry about this. I'll go back into Zoom. And I seem to have lost, we're all having technical difficulties today. Seem to have lost the controls. There we go. Okay, so I will share again. So are you seeing that?
Yes, all good.
Thank you. Okay, so at TAFE Queensland, we have, as I mentioned before, we have our Immersive Technology strategy, which is a plan for the sustainable implementation of immersive technologies across the organisation. We have a number of key initiatives as part of that strategy. The first one is that we have developed a tool that helps really guide our investment decisions. It contains a range of criteria that we evaluate a particular immersive technology against to ensure that it is the right tool for the purpose. So as John mentioned, these immersive technologies really come to the fore in high risk situations, in situations where it would otherwise be very difficult to demonstrate or experience the learning activity, in situations where it would otherwise be very high cost to provide that experience. So to be able to choose the right tool for the right situation is a really important factor to begin with. The other area that we've focused quite a lot of attention is on solutions for managing devices, users whilst in the devices, and the deployment of applications across the devices. We've assessed a number of solutions, and at the moment we are hoping that the MetaQuest for Business solution will really help us manage our fleet of headsets as we scale up across the organisation. Another area that we're focusing on is capability building for our educators, for our teachers, and how we have been doing this is we've purchased a fleet of mostly MetaQuests and Pros, and we are using the TAFE New South Wales apps. We are trialling the use of those in various delivery areas across the organisation. And finally, another key part of our strategy is pilots. So we have a number of pilots that we're trialling the use of the immersive technologies in at the moment. The first one that I'll talk about is in our foundation program at Skills Tech, where apprentices are enrolled in a number of trade areas, including electrotech, refrigeration, building, construction, etc. And they are participating in virtual reality experiences that supplement their training or the courses that they are studying. And students are able to choose which experiences they're ready for at a particular time. The goals for implementation of virtual reality in the foundation program are fulfilling learning objectives and assessment requirements, simulating real-world scenarios otherwise difficult to replicate in a training environment, and improving learner engagement through increased mental stimulation and physical movement. And our results and surveys to date are showing that 90% of students feel more engaged with their learning while in virtual reality. But let me just play this video, and perhaps we'll hear from students and teachers themselves.
Hello, my name's Craig. I work for TAFE Queensland. I work with the Foundation program. We have a program within Foundation where we deliver a virtual reality experience, and that experience is provided by NextWorlds. So the student engagement with virtual reality is extremely good. The end result of the experience that we get, and definitely the feedback from students that we have also, is they feel like they've really taken control of their learning.
Hey, my name's Erin Smith and I'm studying air conditioning and refrigeration at TAFE. So I've just completed the lockout tagout VR. I found it really, really good actually. It certainly did help with sort of really identifying the procedure in the steps of carrying out that task. I'd absolutely love to do more. It was really, really good. I think one of the most standout points was probably the ability to focus. There was no distractions. I was quite focused on what I was doing, and compared to a classroom experience, that for me was second to none. It was definitely a benefit that I didn't ever think would come with VR, but yeah, it was a definite standout.
Hey, my name is Andrew, and I'm here at TAFE studying electrical. So the VR experience that I was in today was the hand safety. I found this VR experience to be pretty incredible compared to traditional training. After this training, I feel much better at identifying the risks. It was a fantastic mix of playing and learning. I think doing training by looking at a computer screen and then inputting some data that you've just read versus actually acting out a scenario and using critical thinking while you're in it. I think it's an experience that is something you can actually take away.
It may cause changes, but I think that change is where everything is at the moment. Everything is changing. You know, the future is going to be a virtual reality training.
So another area where we are trialling immersive technology is with our virtual business college. What we're using here is Tailspin, which is immersive, interactive learning content. The Tailspin solution is multi-platform, so it is available through VR headsets, but also on a browser. And this has been one of the things that we're often looking for our pilots, so that we are not excluding students who don't have access to a virtual reality headset, either one that they own themselves or one that they are using from TAFE Queensland. We are piloting 5 modules for the Cert 3 of Business, a Diploma of Business and Diploma of Leadership and Management with these students. The modules that we are using are communicating effectively, customer relations, etc. Now, with Tailspin, there are a range of off-the-shelf modules, but you're also able to customize the modules, and we've customized 4 of the modules for our delivery, as well as using one that is off the shelf. The goals for implementation of the Tailspin immersive learning content are to supplement the online learning materials with interactive and engaging experiences, simulating role plays which are difficult to replicate, especially with geographically dispersed students in a virtual delivery mode, and also to help students prepare for practical observation assessments. And again, I'll let you hear what the students and teachers have to say about the experience.
My name's Gary McDonald. I'm a casual teacher at TAFE Queensland, and I've been teaching the Business Leadership and Management program for around about 8 years now. And for the past 6 months, we've introduced our virtual business college. So this afternoon, we've been using Tailspin. In my experience, the Tailspin application is quite incredible, the way it imitates and responds to student reaction. The student engagement really increases. I noticed this afternoon, we were trialling it, that students were quite excited. You could see the smiles on their faces.
Hi, my name is Julian Lucas. I'm currently studying a diploma in business at TAFE Queensland. Doing it in VR seems to be a really great tool, but I personally think that it should be mixed between VR and real life. One thing that I've learned was the effects that working from home could have on employees. If I were to read a paragraph on a PDF, I'd forget that information straight away, but I managed to retain it.
Hey, my name is Candice. I'm from France, and I'm just like an international student in TAFE Queensland, and I'm studying the Diploma of Business and Leadership and Management. So today I had the chance to try the Tailspin with the headsets, and finally the experience was just amazing. Really helped me a lot for my English too. Yeah, it helped me to be really focused, because you have the experience, you remember everything of what you did, because you really concentrate on what I do. and I think just can be improve our skills and really impressive for our future. I think that's the future.
The future of this sort of training, VR training, and particularly applications like Tailspin, I think is just unlimited. And in fact, one of the students asked, does that replace me as a teacher? I certainly hope not. I'm hoping that it's going to be an integrated experience, so a combination of both. But I just see it as being unlimited. There is no end point. So I think it's an extremely valuable experience and certainly preparing students for the real workplace.
Yeah, so while it's still very early days for our Tailspin pilot, the early results indicate that students find the VR more engaging than traditional training, and they also agree that it helps prepare them for assessment. So seeing some good results so far there. With our AR welding, TQ first implemented AR welding technology in 2019 and currently have 44 units in various locations across the state. Traditional welding training takes time, can be expensive to deliver, and results in omission, as well as it being high risk. So the simulated welding via AR, on the other hand, is safe, efficient, and without time limitation, allowing students to progress and practice at their own pace while supporting real-time monitoring and assessment. With zero risk involved, the students can respond to realistic scenarios without pressure or fear of injury, enabling them to get the skills and the self-confidence that they need before moving on to the practical assessment tasks. AR welding, I'll just show the video actually, so you can see some of that while I'm talking. AR welding is being used to introduce beginning students to welding and for retraining experienced welders in the new ISO welding standard for future defence and advanced manufacturing. So you'll see it here. It does, the AR welder can do a range of different, using it, you can do a range of different welds. I am no welder, but it can also do different angles, etc. So it's a very useful tool. Might just move on now to the next slide, where we're talking about one of our most innovative pilots is TQ World. It's also one of the elements of our immersive technology strategy. So TQ World is an immersive 3D universe. I'll just play the video while I talk to this so you can get a sense of it. And in this universe, participants can connect and interact virtually. It incorporates virtual reality, augmented reality, mixed reality, and virtual avatar technologies. So you'll see our avatars walking around there. Currently in proof of concept, TQ World is being developed using Engage XR's Metaverse for Education platform. We assessed other solutions, including Horizon Workrooms, VR Chat, Spatial, and we're keen to trial Meta's Horizon Worlds, but that isn't available in Australia as yet. We selected Engage as it was purpose-built for education, and it's also met our security and information privacy requirements. Importantly, Engage has a range of features and functionality well suited to virtual classroom delivery and collaboration. There are pre-built environments, and the environment you're seeing is one of these with TQ branding elements and 3D models that we've selected to suit the different program areas that are being showcased. There's also the ability to build persistent environments and one-off single use environments that could be used for things like, for example, a large event or a presentation. TQ World is currently being featured at Campus Open Days via VR to showcase some of our study areas and courses. The information panels that you may have seen, I think there's one behind in the background there now, enable you to link out to the TAFE Queensland website and browse for more information on particular course areas. And there's also a gallery area to display student work and the informal social spaces that you saw us sitting in there. So if progressed past proof of concept, the next stage will include incorporation into our virtual business college to allow students to collaborate in the metaverse and also meet with their teachers. So I think that's it from me, and we're now back over to you, John. I'll stop sharing.
Thanks, Lee. I'll just bring my presentation back up as well. Okay, just share my screen again there. Hopefully you can all see that. We're getting some great questions in the chat pod as well. Trying to madly answer as many as I can as we go along. So one of the biggest VR applications that TAFE New South Wales has put together was a construction site safety project working in the area of working at heights. It was an initiative that was actually commercially funded by iCare from the IPEC fund with the specific goal to try to not only improve safety knowledge of apprentices, but also to actually change the attitudes of apprentices, try to get apprentices to be more likely to care about safety, be more likely to speak up about safety. Just because of the number of accidents that happen on work sites, particularly with working at heights. The interesting thing about this for me particularly was that the program was actually focused on falls from heights less than 4 meters. Certainly when I think of working at heights and the risks involved, I tend to think of skyscrapers and massive multi-story constructions, but it turns out that actually most falls that cause injuries and even death happen at under 4 meters. So it's residential construction, people falling through a roof of a single-story building, that kind of thing, which is just mind-boggling, really. Like it's crazy to think of the number of people that are in that dangerous situation, and how much help we can give them with that space. We also had the underlying goal within TAFE New South Wales of trying to use this as an opportunity to test some capability uplift and help our teachers to become more confident with technology like VR. So we did a bit of work in the background with some surveys and other things and a lot of teacher training to try and help with that and try to build the confidence of our teachers with using this, at the time, relatively advanced technology. The one particular industry stakeholder had some great feedback and basically saying that it was one of the best apprentice resources they've ever seen. And we've seen most of that kind of feedback coming through from both industry, teachers and students along the same kind of lines. So the project upskilled 38 teachers across 6 campuses across New South Wales, and we put about just over 300 students through the online learning experience, and 163 of those went through the VR experience. The reason we actually had more go through the online was because this all happened at the time of COVID. So there was an opportunity for us to very quickly roll out the online learning to extra students that weren't originally planned to be in the program, just as a quick response to the pressures of COVID. The tool did have so basically the tool had an online or Moodle learning component, and then the VR was set up to be essentially like a self-assessment. So not an official assessment, but an opportunity for students to practice before they do their real world assessments. We saw really, really good results across the program. We had about an 87% gain in safety knowledge for students, which was amazing. And as mentioned, sort of that much greater appreciation of the risks involved for the students, and a much better ability for students to actually identify worksite risks. One of our students here had a wonderful quote of basically describing exactly what we say VR is useful for, which is that basically going through the experience of seeing the dangers, seeing the consequences was actually the real learning outcome for them. They were able to then take that away and understand the dangers better from having lived that experience in the virtual world. And sort of this idea of being able to reinforce that the students are not infallible. As with all of us when we're much younger, we tend to think we're invincible. So we had about 87% of apprentices reporting increased work health safety knowledge by the end of the project. So we basically took a bunch of analytic snapshots at the start of the program, more at the end of the online, and then more again at the end of the VR section, so we could really understand how people were learning and what they were learning. And about 84% of apprentices reporting improved safety work readiness by the end of the project. So this is big stats from before to after as well in terms of the amount of shift we got just through this program. The online program also had some very moving case studies from people who had actually been injured on the site at work, which really I think helped impact there a lot. And there was some sort of first time TAFE New South Wales used a very innovative narrative style to the videos. So it's the videos through the course are very kind of, it's first person perspective, basically shot so that the camera is you and you're being taken through your site inductions and things. And it was really impactful for the students, which was clear through the final outcomes of the program. Similar thing again with the teachers as well, basically saying that students being able to see someone fall, so students being able to experience falling off a ladder or seeing their mate fall down through a void actually was the really impactful thing. The anecdotal feedback we got as well from one of our cohorts, so one of our teachers who was running the iCare program managed to run his students, I think about 100 students went through the VR program, but he also had another class in parallel that were going through just the regular normal classroom experience. And then both those cohorts came back together at the end and did their practical. And this teacher basically said that it was night and day looking at the two groups of students. The students that went through the Working in Heights program with the online and the VR were checking everything. They were really careful, conscious, safety at every turn. And the students that didn't were exactly what you would expect. And they were just going at it gung-ho, not thinking twice, just taking risks left, right, and center, not thinking. And I think it just really goes to show that the power of something in this immersive space and how much more it can kind of reinforce those impacts and actually get people thinking and remembering to take it seriously. And then finally as well, on our teacher outcomes, we really had a great uptake from all of our teachers. Even some of the skeptics, as soon as they saw the program, got trained up, were advocates by the end of the program. And we really saw like big results, 50% up to 93% in terms of the number of teachers who were willing to participate in future VR programs, and even advocacy, like 50% up to 74% in terms of the people that turned around at the end of this and said that they would advocate actively for VR within the organization. So for us, it was a really massive success, and really just helped demonstrate the ability for us to be able to change the lives of these young people. And that kind of circles nicely back to the TILN side of things, which I think Lee will probably talk to in a minute. And we had a question in the chat as well about collaboration between the different TAFEs, and we're actually working at the moment with Lee and TAFE Queensland to get this program implemented in TAFE Queensland as well, which is something that never would have happened if we didn't have the TAFE Immersive Learning Network and the TDA's support for that. So just wanted to call that out, say thanks to TDA.
Yeah, thanks, John. Actually, that's pretty much what I was going to say here, is that we really appreciate the support of TDA and the CEOs of the TAFE institutes around the country and the establishment and ongoing participation in the TAFE Immersive Learning Network. We are sharing knowledge and collaborating across the TAFE sector. And John's called out a few examples today where we have collaborated together and continue to collaborate, but also, examples where Melbourne Poly, for example, have now implemented this automatic welding units in a slightly different way. So, we can learn from that as well. The ability for us to share as we experience and evaluate the various immersive technology platforms and head-mounted displays is also key, because they are expensive, and there's nothing better than learning from each other and sharing experiences. So We hope to continue to do great things. If anybody is not sure if their TAFE is represented on TILN, please feel free to reach out either directly to me or to the TDA team. And I'll pass over to you now, Linda, I think.
Thank you so much to Lee and John for a really interesting presentation. It's really exciting to see how all of this is working in practice and how it's benefiting students and teachers and industry. It's amazing. So thank you. I'd now like to hand over to Tony Maguire from D2L to provide some reflections on this afternoon's discussions. Thank you, Tony.
Thanks, Lyndall, and to Lee and John in particular. That was a wonderful showcase of all of the things that I think distinguish Australia's public vocational system. The way in which teachers remain central to this. I did not see a single learner there without a teacher at their side supporting, encouraging and providing the specific personalised context for learning. So I think it's a really important lesson that whilst VR, and we use the term XR too, John, because we see XR as a kind of an umbrella content term. Whatever the technology is, it still is about technology in support of humanised learning. And I think that is what TAFE does at a higher level than what I typically see. Look, it's an interesting point also in our higher education, universities, TAFE Accord phase as well. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that what we've seen today in terms of not just piloting and proof of concept, but delivery of programs at scale is extraordinarily impressive. So I just want folks to understand that the way in which TAFE Queensland approach things from a framework, from an actual understanding of the pedagogical framework, but also the operational framework is so critical. I think that's something that I often see missing in other pilots. The pilot is a nice to have, or it's something that comes out of a research piece, but the way in which TAFE is trying to operationalise this and then grow it at scale is absolutely unique. I think one of the cautionary pieces I would place out there as you start to think about technologies, and Lee and John and the Immersive Technology network will certainly have better insights into this. But it's only a couple of years ago that this was almost like a beta versus VHS kind of conversation. One particular VR tool would create data in one particular format. You're looking now for things that will integrate data from an LTI perspective. So use that as a starting point. We don't want to go back down the path of having content wrapped up in proprietary boxes that we then can't work with. So I would caution that from a Brightspace perspective. We try to make Brightspace operationally useful to as many tools as possible, and we look to do that through LTI because that's a great standard that everybody can work to. And as folks like Microsoft move towards LTI standards for things like Teams, it becomes more ubiquitous, which then means that the cost of integration, the technical challenges become lessened. One other observation I'll make is that when we start seeing seniors in aged care who are suffering from dementia, and I go back to my own mother at this particular point, access to things like VR totally changed the way in which individuals interact with their world. The fact that we're now applying this effectively at learning in the moment for students shouldn't surprise us. This has been a slow burn for the last 5, 6, 7 years. If you looked at any Horizon support report, we've been talking about VR, XR for years. The way in which it's gaining greater ubiquity in different areas, I think speaks to the fact that unless our teachers and our learners are ready and comfortable and conversational in these technologies, they won't be able to make the most of the knowledge economy we're walking into. So I'll leave it at that point. One last thing. Come September 12th and 14th, we have a connection event in Brisbane and in Melbourne. We'll be working with Lee and the team to host that event there. So if you want to see any of the work that Lee is doing, connect with Lee. That may be one place to do it. Also, we're walking the skills tech site the previous day. So if you want to engage with us around any of that, Lynd will provide those dates, and if you feel it appropriate, bump them out and folks can connect through that. Thank you.
That'd be great, Tony. Thank you. Thank you so much. So that concludes all of our presentations for today. I'd now like to just use the remaining time that we've got left to have a look at some of the great questions that have been coming in. And our panelists have been very diligent in answering some of them, but some of them we might raise again just for the benefit of everyone. There was a question in there, and I was thinking the same question myself from Elaine Butler. I mean, a lot of the examples, you know, when we think about AR and VR, we sort of think about trades and high risk work and that sort of thing. Whereas Lee, you mentioned the virtual business college. So that's, you know, that's a completely different setting to what we're used to. And I think in the interview with the teacher, he said the possibilities are, you know, are unlimited for how we can use this technology. So Lee, I don't know whether you have any more reflections on, you know, how we're using or how you can use immersive technology. You know, it's not just for trades, and how we can, you know, use it for a diverse range of learners.
Yeah, so Tailspin is a really good example of where virtual reality can be used for soft skills or enterprise skills training. And one of the reasons being is that it's conversational based. So the students in that experience are actually conversing with the avatars, and you can build out branching scenarios. So, you know, if they will have options to choose, you know, an answer, and, you know, depending which answer they give, it will branch out, but eventually they will get, you know, to the right, hopefully, the right result. And in the background there, there are points that are being gathered, there's data being gathered in the back end, so that we can actually go in and see how the students are performing in that scenario. So it is quite different to that sort of more high risk, hard skills sort of training. And yeah, we're really looking forward to see further expansion of it across other areas such as nursing and counselling, where we see, you know, it would have really great uses.
Thank you. And another sort of thing that's been coming through the Q&A is, when you're looking at your immersive learning, you know, strategy, how are you, you know, catering to perhaps people who, you know, with poorer digital skills or with literacy and numeracy issues? How are you responding to those needs with those diverse learners?
This is absolutely a challenge as soon as we start moving into this area of immersive technologies. And, you know, there are also challenges there for students who suffer from vertigo and can't, you know, be in a headset, etc. So one of the things that, as I mentioned, we do look for in our pilots and our trials, particularly for solutions that are cross-platform. So you don't have to be in a virtual reality headset to experience it. Tailspin being one example, Engage being another. However, when it comes to full virtual reality, that is a challenge. Within the apps themselves, however, there is a lot of guidance provided, and perhaps John can talk to this, because I know that TAFE New South Wales are at the moment have a particular focus on accessibility issues around this immersive tech. So John, I don't know if you wanted to add anything to that.
Yeah, I think in general, this is a really good point. We've been doing a bit of an exploration in TAFE New South Wales. My boss is heading up a project in digital literacy at the moment. So certainly a big area. I think in terms of where we've implemented VR particularly, we've tended to do a lot of hand-holding where it's required. So it's a new technology to start with, so we tend to train our teachers up one-on-one and actually try and upskill them, but then we kind of come along to the student sessions until they're comfortable. And it is that case of every person you put in VR will be slightly different. They'll have a different level of technology literacy, even down to the point that the controllers are designed for, they're designed off of gaming controllers. So for users who haven't had much experience with a console gaming system before, they're going to find it pretty foreign, and you're going to have to talk them through it pretty slowly. We also build in an induction experience to most of our larger experiences. The public apps we've got have got a very, very quick overview, but because they were public, we were assuming people would probably be interacting with other apps and they'd probably have a bit more VR literacy. But for the working heights application, we have a good probably 5 to 10 minute induction, which just teaches you how to be and exist in VR and how to interact with things, just to try and bridge that gap a little bit more smoothly. In terms of accessibility, my team's currently trying to build out essentially a sandbox of accessibility possibilities, I would call it. So we're basically exploring everything we can to try to see where we can take some of the concepts of traditional accessibility from web and other platforms, and even some of the cues from some of the more advanced studios in the games industry that's starting to think more seriously about accessibility, and how we can translate those to VR, because it's a fully immersive 3D paradigm. It's not really a one-to-one translation for most things. We tend to have to try to rethink the way that something would be presented and try to find a solution that fits the medium. We're pretty close to having a demo available, so we'll be sharing that internally with our accessibility advisory group to get their feedback on that, and I imagine probably running that out through Tilm as soon as we can as well, to get more users in to test that. But yeah, it's a big area for us. We really want to push the boundaries of what's possible, because it's pretty new for the games industry in general, and the technology itself is not the most accessible. So it's good to see headsets like Apple coming out and sort of being a little bit more accessibility forward. But it's definitely an area that we're focused on trying to improve as much as we can.
I want to just call out the first, basic first principle here too, that Lee and John are talking to, and it's about agency. Learner agency is the core of this, and what you saw was learners empowered, learners making choices. And so agency and accessibility are foundational for this. The other piece that I think is really important is when we think about the way in which this is part of formative and summative assessment as well, it's incredibly powerful. You can't, so some of the challenges that unis are facing at the moment around AI, and TAFE is facing around AI, once we make it learning authentic, we make it experiential. We use these sorts of technologies, formative and summative assessment becomes a lot more rigorous. And the data points that you can capture are incredibly powerful and difficult to kind of get around. So I just wanted to share that thought as well.
Just on that, I was going to ask Lee and John, just in the last sort of minute or so, have you got any more reflections on the use of immersive technologies in assessments?
Big can of worms. Watch this space. I think it'll get there eventually, but it's going to take us a long time. It's hard to map technology and the experiences today to the very specific needs of our assessment criteria, and particularly sort of our regulatory requirements and other things. So the way we tend to use it at the moment is we tend to describe it as and use it as a learning tool or another tool in a teacher's arsenal to help with teaching and learning. But then the assessments still happen in the traditional sense.
Thank you. I think we've just about run out of time for today, but I really wanted to thank our three panelists today, John, Tony and Lee. It's been a really interesting and exciting presentation and discussion today. So thank you. And thank you to everyone out there who joined us. We look forward to seeing you at our next TAFE Talks, which is on the 30th of August. I also wanted to just do a quick plug for another TDA online event, which is coming up in October. It's an online conference on the afternoon of the 18th of October. on the theme of linkages, one tertiary education system, and it's really exploring the policy and practice of better alignment between vet and higher education. So more details will be coming from TDA about that next week in the TDA newsletter. But thanks again for everyone for your participation today. Thank you.